What's up, Algebra 1 kids? This is your last week of material. Again, we are introducing something new here, and unfortunately, with how this works, I can't really go into a great depth on your assignments, but I'm going to go into a little more depth here. So there's going to be 2 videos this week. So we're talking about these things, if you've looked at the assignments, these things called polynomials. Okay, so last week, whenever we did our assignments and stuff, we were talking about like just multiplying two things together like that. Remember last week when we multiplied variables together, we added their powers. Okay, recall that, right? Now we're talking about things called polynomials. What we were talking about right there, that's a monomial. And we're going to get to that real quick. And I'm just going to go over this stuff real quick just so you've seen it. Again, we'll have to figure out a way to make sure that you actually get this stuff in your upcoming math classes. But anyway, a polynomial is an algebraic expression with 2 or more terms. Okay, so a polynomial, basically, it has multiplication, addition, and subtraction. Remember last week I said no addition or subtraction. Okay, so we have multiplication, addition, and subtraction going on, and it's an expression with 2 or more terms. And when you have terms, they're separated by addition or subtraction. All right, so like going down here, we're talking about terms. If there's only one term, we call this a monomial. Okay, if there are 2 terms, this is what I mean by 2 terms. It's separated by addition. So you have this term would be your first term, and this term would be your second term. So you have 2 terms, and we call that a binomial. Okay. And then if you have 3 terms, like this one, you have this guy, this one, and this one. Okay, separated by addition and subtraction. There are 3 terms, we call that a trinomial. And once you get to 4 terms or more terms, these get a lot bigger than this. There's some crazy polynomials out there if you get into higher level math. If there's 4 terms or more, that's why I say 4 plus over here. If there's 4 or more, we just generalize them and call them polynomials. We stop giving them cool names. These ones are also polynomials, okay? But they have their own name. So this is some background, okay, on what a polynomial is. It's not just a single term anymore. It has multiple terms. We have names for them, binomials, trinomials, stuff like that. We also can classify them based on the highest power that you see. So like the first one, the 5x, the power on that x is just a 1, right? We don't see it, but we know it's there. That's called linear. Same with this one. The highest power on that x, that's called linear because it's a power of 1. Okay. The next one has a power of 2. Okay, gonna write over it in red here. If the highest power is 2, which it is, okay, because the next one has a power of 1, right? And so does that. And we'll get to that number here in a second. If it has a highest power of 2, we call it quadratic. And then like the next one, if it's the highest power of 3, we call that a cubic. And then it can continue. If there's the highest power is the power of 4, we call it a quartic. Highest power of 5, we call that a quintic. And then we stop calling them because you really don't see any of those, especially in, most math classes. Okay, so this is how we classify polynomials, okay? We call them based on their power and their number of terms. So normally in class I'd have a whole section over classifying, but again, we can't. So I'm going to make 2 up over here just so you have an idea. I have this one and quit using plus signs. Let's just make 2 up real quick so you get a general idea of it. This first one has 2 terms, so we're going to call it a binomial. And the highest power is also a 2, which we call a quadratic. So its name would be a quadratic binomial. You put the power name first and then the term name. So that one would be a quadratic binomial. The next one, let's start with the power, because that's how the name starts, the power of 4. So it's quartic. And there's 1, 2, 3 terms. Our name for that, if you go back up, is a trinomial. So a little background on how they're named. Notice also on all mine that I wrote, they go in order, right? Don't they? They go from the highest power to the next highest power, and the number is always last, which I forgot to put that here. If it's just a number, we call that a constant. Okay. And so in math, you're supposed to put them in order from the highest power to the lowest power, and I say that right here. Right there. Put answers in standard form. That's what that's called. Highest power to lowest power. Again, if you don't watch this video and you don't do that, not the end of the world. But if you watch this video and you see this part, I would appreciate if you put them in standard form, because that's how they belong. But the first thing I ask you to do on this section is pretty simple. I ask you to add and subtract them. Okay, when you add and subtract, you combine like terms like we always have. Now you need to understand what makes something a like term, because now we're dealing with multiple variables, super high powers, so it's not as simple as it was before, but it actually really is. Like terms are terms with the same variables and accompanying exponents. So what's that mean? Well, it means, like on this first example, I can't add these two things together. Nah. Can't do anything with that. That's as simple as it's going to get. Because though they do both have an x, the power on this one is a 4, the power on this one's a 3. That makes them not like terms. Because like I said right here, for something to be a like term, it's got to have the same exact variable and the same exact powers with that variable. So I can't add x to the 4th and x to the 3rd. They're not like terms. All right? So no, I can't do that one. Next one, I can do this one because they're both x cubes, right? They're both x cubes, so they are like terms. So how do I add like terms? Well, back in the day when we solved equations, if I did 4x plus 2x, you would tell me it's 6x. It's that simple. You just add or subtract the numbers in front of the variables. So if I have 2x cubed plus 5x cubed, that is 7x cubed. And this is a mistake a lot